Good morning. This is Professor Adolfo Arevalo, and here we again will have this session on our online lesson about the derivation of the linear demand and supply equation. Later, we will be exposed to some demand and supply problems that we are required to derive the demand equation or the supply equation of a given market situation. But before dealing with the problems, we need to understand the equations that will be used for the derivation of the demand and the supply equations. Um, Linear equations can be of several forms. Aside from the general form, of course, uh, we have these three forms that are very important in the analysis of demand and supply. First, we have the 2 points form. We also have the point slope form, and we have the slope intercept form. We want to obtain a slope intercept form of the linear equation. So we will be transforming the 2 points form into a slope intercept form, or we will transform rather the point slope form into the slope intercept form. So let us now get to the equation of the different forms of linear equation. Now, when we speak about 2 points form, 2 points form is given by the equation y minus y sub 1 is equal to the change in y over the change in x minus x sub 1. The change in y is actually y2 minus y1, and the change in x is x2 minus x sub 1. So the 2 points form, y minus y1 is equal to a numerator of y2 minus y1 and the denominator of x2 minus x1. And then multiply it to x minus x sub 1. The 2 points form is given by the equation y minus y sub 1 is equal to b, which b refers to the slope, times x minus x sub 1. Slope intercept form is given by y is equal to a plus bx. But because we are not anymore making use of the letters y and x, instead of y we use quantity, and instead of x we use price. So we will now have this form of a linear equation for the demand and supply. In the 2 points form, we have q minus q sub 1 is equal to q2 minus q1 all over p2 minus p1 times p minus p sub 1. The point slope form is given by q minus q1 is equal to b times p minus p1. And the slope intercept form is q is equal to a plus bp. Now, take note that the b stands for the slope, and the slope is the change in the dependent variable over change in the independent variable, so that the slope is given by the equation q2 minus q1 all over p2 minus p1. So let us have here this problem, and let us try to make use of this 2 points form. Now, why 2 points form? Because what we have as a given are 2 points on a Cartesian plane. If we connect these 2 points, it can create a straight line. And so the straight line has a corresponding linear equation. And so this is what we want to determine. Uh, the equation of the straight line formed by the given 2 points along the Cartesian plane. So what are these 2 points? The 2 points are the paired value of quantity and price. So there are two periods given here. When we refer to the demand situation in a market, we have period 1, which price is 5 and quantity demanded is 10, and period 2, its price is 3 pesos and quantity demanded is 35. But let us just begin this problem from reading the given problem. Suppose that the quantity demanded of the particular commodity in the market is 10 units when the selling price is 5 pesos. Derive the demand equation given that when the selling price decreased to 3 pesos, the quantity demanded of the commodity increased to 35 units. So basically in the problem, what is given is a price of 10, or the quantity rather, demanded of 10 when the price is 5 pesos. So we assume this to be the first period. And we are told to derive the demand equation after that the price has changed from 5 pesos to 3 pesos, so that the new price now is 3 pesos. And because of the change in price from 5 pesos to 3 pesos, the quantity demanded also changed from 10 units to 35 units. So thus we have these two periods or 2 points on a Cartesian plane. The first point is given the value of 10 and 5. 10 being the value on the horizontal axis and 5 being the value of a point on the vertical axis. So the paired value of 10 and 5 corresponds to quantity and price. So that's the first paired value. The second paired value is 35 and 3. So 35 being the quantity and 3 pesos being the price for the second point, which is referring to the second period. So if you will notice that we are moving downward from left to right along the Cartesian plane. So by connecting these 2 points, we can derive the straight line, and the equation of the straight line is what we are going to find out. So since there are 2 points given on the Cartesian plane, we will be making use of the 2 points form. And again, the formula for the 2 points form is Q minus Q1 bracket quantity Q2 minus Q1 quantity divided by quantity P2 minus P1 quantity bracket quantity P minus P1 bracket, or rather quantity. So we will just have to substitute the given values to the variables given in the equation, but we retain those variable without a subscript. We will only be substituting values for those variables with a subscript. So a subscript of 2 refers to second period, and a subscript of 1 refers to the first period. So first, we have to substitute Q1 to the equation. Q1 has a value of 10. And Q2 has a value of 35. P2 has a value of 3 and P1 has a value of 5. So if we now substitute this to the given equation, we now have Q minus 10 is equal to bracket quantity 35 minus 10 quantity divided by quantity 3 minus 5 quantity bracket quantity P minus 5 quantity. And so if we will simplify now this equation, we can have Q minus 10 is equal to 25 over negative 2 quantity P minus 5 quantity. Simplifying further, we now have quantity minus 10 is equal to negative 12.5 quantity P minus 5 quantity. So that it will result to the equation. We now have to transpose the whole term of negative 10 found to the left side of the equality sign, transpose it to the right side so it will become positive. Thus, we will now have this equation, quantity is equal to minus 12.5p plus 62.5 plus 10. So the negative 10 now becomes positive 10 after transposing it from left of the equality sign to the right. Now the 62.5 actually is simply the product when we multiply the 12.5 to what is inside the parenthesis, which is negative 5. Since they are both negative, so the product of both positive is, or the product of both negative is positive. That's why it is 62.5. Now, if we are to arrange the terms so that the Q and the P variables can be found to both ends of the given equation, then we can now have the equation in the form of slope-intercept form. Q is equal to 72.5 minus 12.5p. So this is now the equation of this straight line. And this becomes the equation of our demand. So the demand equation now, given this market condition as stated in the problem, is quantity equals 72.5 minus 12.5p. So here we transform the 2 points form into a slope intercept form. So take note of how the problem was stated. The problem was stated that the price the price increased, or rather decreased, from 5 to 3. So a change from 5 to 3, the new price now becomes 3. And the quantity demanded increased from 10 to 35. So take note of the mentioning of the word to after a given change. Okay, let us to move further. Let us have here the supply equation. So earlier it was the demand equation. This time we will have the supply equation. Let us consider this problem. Suppose that the quantity supplied of the particular commodity in the market is 50 units when the selling price is 5 pesos per unit. Derive the supply equation given that when the selling price decreased to 3 pesos, the quantity supplied of this commodity decreased also to 20 units. So take note, class, that the pair of value is referring to period 1, or seeing it in the Cartesian plane, it is point 1. So the point 1 has a paired value of 50 and 5, 50 being the quantity supplied and 5 being the price. And the second period is given by a paired value of 20 and 3. 20 being the quantity supplied and 3 pesos being the price. That refers to the second point on a Cartesian plane. So if we now connect the points, we actually is moving from right to left, okay? And the direction is downward, meaning to say that both the price and the quantity supplied decreased from a paired value of 50 and 5 to 20 and 3. So if we now connect these 2 points, it can create a straight line. And the equation of the straight line is what we are going to determine. So since there are 2 points given, we can make use of the 2 points form and then transform these 2 points form into a slope intercept form. So on the PowerPoint presentation, we have this equation for the 2 points form. We'll just have to substitute the given values to those variables with a subscript. Note again that the subscript of 2 refers to the second period and the subscript of 1 refers to the first period. We will retain those variables without a subscript, so that if we now substitute these given values to those variables with the subscripts, we can have this equation. Quantity minus Q1 of 50 is equal to Q2 of 20 minus Q1 of 50 all over P2 of 3 minus 5 of P1, and then P minus P1 of 5. So again, by simplifying, we can have this equation given as Q minus 50 is equal to quantity negative 30 divided by negative 2 quantity times P minus 5 quantity. And so we have Q minus 50, simplifying further rather, Q minus 50 is equal to 15 P minus 75. 15 is based from a slope of 30 over 2. Since their signs are both negative, so it can become positive. Now, if we transpose or rather multiply 15 to what is inside the parentheses, the P and the negative 5, we can now have this equation. Quantity minus 50 is equal to 15P minus 75. And since we have the negative 50 to the left side of the equality sign, we will have it transformed to the other side of the equality sign so that the negative can become positive. Negative 50 will become positive 50 after the transformation. The transposition. So we now have the simplified equation of Q equal to 15P minus 75 plus 50, which will become quantity is equal to 15P minus 25 by rearranging the terms so that the both ends should have these unknown variables Q and P, we can have quantity is equal to 25 plus 15P. So this is now the equation of the straight line that we have connected out of the 2 points, or we have a line that we have connected from the given 2 points. Now, this is already our supply equation. So again, the supply equation from the given market condition is now quantity equals to negative 25 plus 15P. So take note of how we are able to transform the 2 points form into the slope-intercept form. Okay, so same formula is used. Either we derive the demand equation or the supply equation. Now, let us have this slide again. In fact, we have the same problem, but what is different is the use of by instead of to from the given problem. Take note of the problem statement. In this particular problem statement, let us read. Suppose that the quantity demanded of the particular commodity in the market is 10 units when the selling price per unit is 5 pesos. Derive the demand equation given that when the selling price decreased by 2 pesos, the quantity demanded of this commodity increased by 25 units. So observe the use of by instead of to. In the previous problem, we used 2, but now we use 5. We use rather by. So the 2 is different from by. By using the by, it actually specifies how much is the change. But by using the 2, we actually express that a particular value became, or rather has changed to a particular value. So specifying further from this given equation, the price of 5 increased by 2, or rather decreased by 2, so that the price now of 5 pesos becomes 3 pesos because it has decreased by 2 pesos. The quantity demanded, on the other hand, originally it was 10, but it has increased by 25, so the new quantity now is 35. So we have the first point represented by a paired value of 10 and 5. And we have the second point on a Cartesian plane represented by paired value of 35 and 3. In fact, this is just the same points given on the previous slide. But what is different is the using of by instead of to in a given problem. So please take note of the use of by and to, because it can actually make your given values different. Okay, so since we made use of by instead of to, the by actually specifies the amount of change in the price or the amount of change in the quantity. So these changes in the quantity and price will actually specify the value of B, which is our slope. So we are now using the linear equation in the form of point slope form and transform this into a slope intercept form. So basically, the equation now will be given by Q minus 10 is equal to change in Q over the change in P times P minus 5. And so substituting the values of 25 and negative 2 to the corresponding change in Q and change in P given in the problem, we can now have this equation stated as Q minus 10 is equal to 25 over negative 2 P minus 5. So simplifying, we will have this value Q minus 10 equals to negative 12.5 times P minus 5. And simplifying further by transposing, or rather, yes, transposing the negative 10 found to the left side of the equality sign, and we will have it transposed to the right side of the equality sign. It can now become positive. So we will now have this equation, quantity is equal to negative 12.5p plus 62.5 plus 10. The 62.5 is actually the product of the negative 12.5 and negative 5. So we now have 12.5 negative times negative 5 is positive 62.5. Now, the final equation now can be read as quantity equals to negative 12.5p plus 72.5. But we want to arrange the terms so that the variables Q and P can be now observed on the end sides of the given equation. So we now have Q is equal to 72.5 minus 12.5p. And this serves as our demand equation. And what we have just used is the point slope form of the linear equation, and we transformed it to the slope intercept form. Just the same for supply equation, we are making use now of by instead of to. So what was specified is that the price decreased by 2. So originally the price was 5 pesos and it now decreased by 2, so that the new price now is 10, because if the price of 5 decreased by 2, 5 minus 2 will become 3. The quantity, according to the problem, was 50 and it decreased by 30, so that 50, when it decreased by 30, will become 20. So that the paired value in the first period is 50 and 5, and the value in the second period, or the first paired value in the second period now, is 20 and 3. Let us again read the problem. Suppose that the quantity supplied of the particular commodity in the market is 50 units when the selling price is 5 pesos. Derive the supply equation given that when the selling price decreased by 2 pesos, the quantity supplied of this commodity decreased also by 30 units. Now, looking at the points on a Cartesian plane, we have these 2 points. The first point given by the paired value of 50 and 5, which is our point 1, and our second period or point 2 is given by a paired value of 20 and 3. Now again, if we connect these 2 points, we can form a straight line, and a straight line must be defined by a linear equation in a form of slope-intercept form. So what was given in the problem are linear equation in the form of the point slope form. So we will use the point slope form of Q minus Q1 equal to BP minus P1 and transform it to the slope-intercept form. So again, using the steps we have previously dealt with, we will now substitute the values corresponding to the change in Q and the change in P. The change in Q was stated as a decrease by 30 and decreased by 30 in terms of quantity supplied, and the price has decreased by 2 pesos, so that the change in quantity is 30 and the change in price is 2 pesos. Both are negative because of the decrease. So since the numerator is negative and the denominator is also negative, we have positive 50. Simplifying the equation, we can now derive to the arranged value of Q equal to negative 25 plus 15P. So please observe, okay, the using of to and by, because the to and by could mean differently. Now, because we already have derived the demand and the supply equations, we can now proceed to the next problem, which is to find for the price equilibrium and the quantity equilibrium. So look at the point of intersection between the demand curve and the supply curves given on the Cartesian plane. You will notice that the point of intersection can be found specifically at the values of 3.54 for price and 28.25 units for quantity. And the 3.54 as the price value of the corresponding point of intersection, which we refer to as equilibrium point. The corresponding price value is called price equilibrium, and the corresponding quantity value of the point of intersection is called quantity equilibrium. We already have learned last time on how to find for the price equilibrium and quantity equilibrium. So it is now easier to solve. But for purposes again of uh, deriving the value price equilibrium and quantity equilibrium, of course, when we have these demand and supply equations given, we can equate these two equations. QS should be equated to QD. And QS is given by the equation negative 25 plus 15P, while QD is given by the equation 72.5 minus 12.5P. Now, bringing all those terms with P to the left side of the equality sign and the whole numbers to the right side of the equality sign, then we have 15P plus 12.5P equals to 72.5 plus 25. Simplifying, we will have 27.5P equals to 97.5. And by solving P, we can bring the multiplicand of 27.5 to the other side, so it can become a divisor. So we'll now have this value of P equal to 97.5 over 27.5. And therefore, by solving the quotient, we can now have this value of P equal to 3.54, which serves as the price equilibrium. And for solving the quantity equilibrium, we can use either of the supply equation or the demand equation as our reference equation. Let us this time make use of the demand equation. So by using the demand equation, we have QD is equal to 72.5 minus 12.5P. And substituting the price equilibrium to the P of the demand equation, we can have QD equal to 72.5 minus 12.5P times the price equilibrium. So the fact that we have already multiplied the price equilibrium, we already rather have substituted the price equilibrium to the P of the demand equation. The Q now becomes the quantity equilibrium. So quantity equilibrium now is equal to 72.5 minus 12.5 times the price of equilibrium of 3.54. Simplifying, we will have quantity equilibrium is 72.5 minus 44.25, and so the outcome is 28.25 units, which is the value of our quantity equilibrium. So again, to highlight this derived value of price equilibrium and quantity equilibrium, so corresponding to the P value of the point of intersection between the demand